Guru Rana Mendra Kamiyatayami Sanje Chedan Zoye Jonam La Chanju Pardu Dani Jazuje Dagi Jejin Give Zenam Ji Jola Penjir Sanje Vajo Sanje Chedan Zoye Jonam La Chanju Pardu Dani Jazuje Dagi Jejin Give Zenam Ji Jola Penjir Sanje Jubara Sho Sanje Chedan Zoji Chonam La Changju Pardo Dani Kyasuji Dagi Chijin Give Zenam Ji Jola Penjir Sanje Jubara Sho 오야 다드링에 아니 가슴 림부치기 아니 강라 가슴 캐니랑 숨비다 줍다시 거데 아니 줍다시 대니 대주당 담에 차라 대주 아니 드링마 다 디스시기 잉스
No. So today I'm going to kind of give an explanation of some of the things that we've gone over yesterday and the day before related to how the different tenant schools posit the two truths and subtle and coarse selflessness and so forth. So I'll give a little bit of an explanation of that.
좀 뭐가체 아니다 줍다 소소소기 아니 덴바니기 칸데 대기요래 아니 다음에 칸데 대기요래 디 마시에 인스텝 탭데다 마시샤 로 뭐가체 탭 가상 괜히 게 뭐지 로차다 로
So I'm not going to be reading directly from the text, but rather instead give a bit of an explanation going through each of the four tenant schools, how they posit the two truths and how they posit selflessness and so forth. So we're not going to be reading directly from the text for those of you who have the Tibetan.
아니 다 줍다 시 대니 대주당 다 당맥이 대주 시에데 지당다 갈라오다 줍다 시에데 줍다 시디 잠바 잠불링라다 통미 줍다 당보데다 낭바상체비 줍다데 말에 줍다 당보데 다 치료비 줍다레 치료비 낭내자 빼다 셀로 붐장 망빙년에 아니 장전바스에게 춥다데 다베 잠불링라 춥다 nga쇼데 디레스 치료 장전비 춥다 베셀로 사야 붐장 망빙년에 춥다데 요레스 다드니 마치네 아니 치료비 춥다 망보지 제디니스 잠불링라다 노니동기 공라 선전 좀 된데 페네 아니 낭비 춥다 시에 충로
춥다기 데시디스
춥다라나 아니 랑기 유라 제바 체네 따제 체비 탈레 투비 따제 체비 탈레 투바라디 따제 체네 아니 현다 녜신예 바지 요라 소소기 따제 체네 오 따디 인서레세 따제 체비 탈레 유라 제바 체비 탈레 아니 랑라다 켈렌지 녜바 켈렌지 투바 인장 딜라 투타스 딱제시디 딱다다 체달란 말다 제바 체비 탈레 아니 랑기 켈렌 제바 체비 탈레 투비 켈렌 지글라 투타스
No. No. So here, the Buddhists were not the first tenants in the world. If we look at this world, there were others who espoused different sort of views, including what we call the Indian school called the Samkhyas, and they go back hundreds of thousands of years potentially. And so these various tenant schools developed in India and elsewhere. So there were older schools and then different outsider non-Buddhist sort of assertions that developed, and then finally the Buddhists came along and were proponents of a certain school of tenets. And so here this word tenant, as we translate it into English, tenant, in the Tibetan it's made of two syllables, trupta, and really what this is referring to is having gone to the limit of examination of an object. So here, it's like a philosophical system that develops by investigating an object such that you come to a determination, you come to a thesis, something that you are accepting about the world, the way that things are. And so when you have arrived at that kind of conclusion or limit of what you determine to be established and so forth, this is what this English, as we translate it into English as tenant, is referring to.
오야 단네 낭바값스 법이 낭바상진비 춥다 아니 춥다 남진간서 다 낭바상진 벌 춥다 심어도 아니 요 말에다 도이낭라 지당 춥다 시세 미카셰기 다 케바카셰기 시엘라 다 견제 시엘라 춥다 시세의 백이 서버에 마도 자가기 슝라 자가낭라 춥다 시세기 요 말에 쓰기요래 간신은 실증이 또이 나라 도대바다 샘잠바다 체자마와다 탄주와다 탄예지에 요 말에 망쳐 견버래 다 이나야 또 망보지기 나라 디 매바 인장 견보 디 탄예데 견보 인장 아니 오다 또이 나라 아니 딘디기 탄예 민두세 도대바 체자마와 샘잠바 탄주와 시에기 딘디기 상쟁기 까디지 나라 배 통해 민도 스타 가시기 딘데스기오다 근본인자 이나야 배때 매번 말에 디 탄예데 요래 또 이낭래 요다 요래 이나 배 뇽뇽쇼 인자 아니 춥다 시시에데 배박이 쓰여버려 마도 야가낭라 아니 디요 말에 승인데 요래.
No. So there are some. Now, Buddhists assert that there are only 4 tenant schools. There aren't any more or fewer than that. The Buddhist sort of tenant holders are limited to 4. And this is actually explained in the sutras. However, some look at this and say, well, you know, this is something that the Tibetans made up. They just created this system of 4 tenant schools. And the reason for their thinking this is that in sutras such as the Perfection of Wisdom Sutra and so forth, these terms are quite rare. We don't see a lot of use of the term Great Exposition School or Sutra School, Mind-Only School, Consequentialist School, and so forth. And so because these terms are quite rare in the sutras and we don't see them very often, some would assert that this is some kind of invention of the Tibetans and that these philosophical schools didn't exist or they weren't enumerated by the Buddha. But we would say that this is not the case. It's not that they were something made up by the Tibetans, but rather because the terms are very rare in the sutras, it's easy to think that way.
오야 딘데자 다 춥다스 얘기 쿵 또이 또 가와낭라 또 스나 아니 다또 아니 베나 또 지기낭라 요래 춥다시 지기낭라 칸도마 타위 돈바라에기 지지 요래 디낭라 춥다시 타nye 요래 디기제와 아니 찬주선바 도진닝비 제바시에 요래 디낭라 아니 체라마와다 도데바시에 타ny에도 디낭라 요래 야가기
도진닝보
도진닝비 창주선바 도진닝비 제바 So
here, as for what is the source of these terms for the 4 different tenant schools, there is a particular tantra that actually includes all of the terms or all of these names for the various schools. And there is a commentary by the Bodhisattva Dorje Ningpo that explicates this tantra that includes these 4 terms for the various tenant schools.
오야 디 도디낭라 아니 춥다시 타냐데체 아니 죽텔라다 돔점니 춥달라 남바상진비 춥달라 시마도 춥당나 요 말와 택바숨다 춥다 시시에지 어디 또 돔점니 가르승 요레스나 상젠발라 시바당 나바 투비 공바 민스 남바상젠발라 택바숨다 춥다 시마도 택바 시당 택바 시바 직체 춥당 나와직 아니 투바 상제 좀 된다니 공바 말레스 아니 춥다 시라 장내 바레 택바 숨라 장내 바레스 도딘나라 요르다 상제 발라 시바당 시발라디 택바 시바당 춥당 나바데 상제 좀 된데 공바 말레스 상제 발라 시바당 나바 투비 공바 민스 인자 춥다 시 장내 바당 아니 택바 숨도 장내 바데 아니 티테 텔라 숨 요르스.
No. So it is said at the end of this sutra that there are only these 4 tenant schools. So it says that the intention of the Buddha was that there are 4 philosophical schools. There aren't 5 or 3 or something like that. It's definite as as being four. And it also mentions that there are only three vehicles. So this at the end of this sutra, it asserts that there are only three vehicles of the Buddha's teachings, and there are only these four tenant schools. That was the intention of the Buddha. They're not five or any other number, but rather only four.
Oh yeah, that didn't that to she nangla da ani dame dezu dembani dem zo da deni dembani den la bebzugi anen tawatara dame tara yongi yora da dembani sie de da nangbi tupda shiga ge ke lengi yore dembani sie de kunjop dan tendam sie de da nangbi tupda shiga ge ke lengi yore dadu meba sie ge dame ani dadu meba sie de nangbi tupda shiga ge ke lengi yore.
So among these four, they all have different ways of positing or asserting the two truths, but they all accept that there are these two truths, conventional truth and ultimate truth. So the differences between them come mainly because of the way that they posit the two truths that then leads into how they posit subtle or coarse selflessness. And so all of these four tenant schools accept that there are two truths, and they also accept the idea of selflessness, although there are varying sort of degrees of subtlety to their views.
Oh yeah, that dembani sie de sanje jumden de rangi ani sheja thamje dembani su tua de sanje jumden de rangi ani bema ta na ni pena ani yase jawi to sur yase jawi to la de sanje jumden de ani chimne rabdu jungni ani chimne 포장 내 파다 포장 샹니 아니 rabju jungni ani gawache sangje ani 디버블 얍 야보 세정 세자 투비오 마라 아니 상제 차장 차위 제라 아니 얍기 아니 다 덴데시르 다 상제 좀 덴데 시디 잠바 아니 얍기 다 간조다 마소나 다 디즈 카르스오레 소담랑다 마레 다 소담도 다 지랑 자시 샹니 아니 베 단다파도 치로라 돈이 자시 베티 샹니 침밀레 땅니 치로라 돈이 다 지랑기 카레시에서 라르다 카레시에서 시디 아니 디랜라 상제 좀 된대기 아니 도 코랑기 나라 가사 옆세저위 또 있는 가래스는 대신 셰베 군접다 된담비 덴반니 투수 치대 셰바 차와양 군접다 된담비 덴반니 소소다 옆세저위 또 렌디 gem바레스 우리 산제 좀 된대기 고랑기 얍라로 가래 특별한게 가래시에서 라디 다 대신 셰베 군접다 된담비 덴반니 투수 치대에서 시송을 오래 셰바 차와양 군접다 된담비 덴반니 소 라디 잠바 셰잘라 디니 마도 민두스 시절라 군접다 된담비 템바니 마도 민두 군접다 된담비 템바니 되는 게다 차장 시차송서 어디랜 템바레스 딘딘장 단남징은 또 시절라 얘는 템바니 시에데 상체 좀 된데 랑기베 마 이어제 제낭바레.
So, according to the Buddhist teachings, all objects of knowledge, all knowable things are divided, are contained within the two truths, ultimate truth and conventional truth. And as for the source of this, there is a sutra called the Meeting of the Father and Son Sutra. And so here, the Buddha left his home to become sort of renounced and engaged in all of these ascetic practices, and then finally went through the practices that led to his becoming fully enlightened. And then at that point, he met with his father. His father invited him to come, and he met with his father. And his father didn't exactly, well, he sort of chastised him, saying, like, you gave up your kingdom and you went off, and so what is it that you've learned? What have you figured out here? And so in this sutra, the Meeting of the Father and Son Sutra, the Buddha replies to his father by saying that he's come to thoroughly understand the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. All objects, all knowable things are contained within these two truths. So he replies, he gives to his father what he has learned, what he has come to understand, and it is these two truths, that all knowable objects, all knowable things are contained within ultimate truth and conventional truth. And so this is a source for that in this Meeting of the Father and Son Sutra.
Oh yeah, that 딘데인자 다 데니기 남샤데 다 데니기 남샤라 데네 텐담 뎀비 남샤 조주 만자와 텔라 때네 아니 조다 군접다 텐담 뎀바 조주 민자와 텔라 때네 아니 따와 데니기 남샤 조주 만자와라 때네 아니 따와 차라 레기요레스.
So there are different ways then through these different schools of positing the two truths, and it is there are different ways of positing ultimate truth and conventional truth that then leads to a difference in subtlety of view. So based upon how they posit the two truths, that's how their view is then established, and this leads to the different kind of views that tenet schools have.
당보다 제다마위 되니데 딱 간대질라 되기를 했으나 다 가상 림보체 가상도와 슈 숭차서 제다마위 덴바니데 아니 제다마위 군접 덴바스나 아니 다 군접 덴비 되는데 아니 저기 룽데 강라 좀당 로이신 사나 텔로 미주바 품주신도 군접도 예데 된담 예신노세 로아 좀바 양나 좀바라디 여러와 짝바 bên 품바다오지 잠이 품바다오지 토아시니 짝바이나 아니 파기나 오다 쪽제디 강나 품바두 삼빌로데 도도기로 당보 쪽제디 강나 품바지 두 냠도 삼기 예나양 텔라 토아지시나 품바데 차조디 다 쪽제 강나 품바두 냠비 로데 라차라 다 로데 메바 차차라 인당 다 딘제이나 다 품바데 군접된 바레스 좀봐 양나 로이 차셰 소소사나 시디 양 시가식라 좀해다 요 말데 로이 차셰 소소사나 베나 좀봐 마이나 베나 디요라 차셰 풍보도 지기 파 락바당 강바 아니 고 스샤바이나 아니 디기 미 수보시에데 메와 차도 오 딘디 차셰 베나 레도 지기 쿠바레레레 파사와이나 야 레드빌로 도도 디조 상만 군접된바 군접된비 되는데 로이 차셰 수수 싸와다 좀바이나 딜라 군접된바 스기요레스.
So, according to the first school, the Great Exposition School, or the Vaibhashika School, they give the definition of a conventional truth, and this comes from Vasubandhu's Compendium of Higher Knowledge, as being a phenomenon that is such that when it is broken up or mentally separated into individual parts, the awareness apprehending that object is canceled. So here, if for example you have like a clay pot, if you break that pot into pieces, you no longer have a mind apprehending a pot. Like if you had a pot on this table and then someone breaks this clay pot, you no longer have a mind that apprehends a pot. It's been broken into pieces, and so therefore the apprehension of that object is canceled. It's gone. Or for example, if you something that's not necessarily like breakable, but rather you can divide it into parts, like someone, if you have the form of a person and you divide it into the hands and the head and the feet and so forth, you no longer apprehend the person as a whole. You don't have that mind apprehending a person. Or if you have like a piece of cloth and you take that cloth and pull it apart into the individual threads, then you no longer have a mind apprehending a piece of cloth. So for them, a conventional truth is something where if you divide it up or you break it apart, you no longer have an awareness apprehending that object.
오야, 다 텐담 덴바스나 디 도저데레스 그래. 아니 좀밤 시나양로 코진빌로데 도레메바 다좀 빼나 초와다 두시에다 두제다 세기 심기 릭 망보지 요라 디졸라 좀에 요 말에 시기에 요 말에 디조 로이 차셰 사야 요 말에 디조 진빌로데 아니 코 좀나양 좀저 토와다 딘데 시에 가요 요 말에 매바인자 딘데기 좀 시기로데 도르도 미룽와 디조 텐담 덴바레 스타 초와다 두시 심중기 셈다 심중기 릭 디조 창마 아니 미닥바 시에도 아니 다 다음에 발라서 봐 디조 창마다 텐담 덴바 차기 요래.
So then what they posit as being ultimate truth is the opposite of a conventional truth. So it's anything that is not, the awareness is not canceled out because of being broken apart or mentally separated. So things like moments of mind, when we have a moment of feeling or discrimination or something like that, where it can't be separated out or divided into pieces such that you are no longer able to apprehend it, those types of things are ultimate truths. When you can't, when the awareness of something is not canceled by breaking it apart or dividing it into pieces. So things like impermanence and selflessness, the aggregates of feeling and discrimination and so forth, individual moments of those minds are considered to be ultimate truths because they are the opposite of this definition of a conventional truth, such that when they're broken up or divided, the awareness of that is not canceled out.
오야 다 딘데기 제담마에 아니 된담된바다 군조된비 된다데 딘데레 아니 천시저오데 딘체 다 도데베 아니 된담된바다 군조된바 양 된다 만다레 로 천시양 만다레 도데베 아니 된담된바 신나다 규진을 깨버지라 쓰기래 규래 깨버지라 콜라 코 규이 깨바이나 딱코 된담된바 차바레 코 규이 깨바마이나 코란 딱바다오지나 아니 된담된바 마레 군접된바레 따도디베데 렐로레 코 규이 깨바이나 된담된바레 규이 깨바마이나 군접된바레.
So that's the way that the Great Exposition School posits these two truths, and then moving on to, and it gives illustrations of those, so an example to illustrate each of the truths. And then moving to the Sutra School, so for them, they have a different kind of understanding of ultimate truth and conventional truth. For the Sutra School, ultimate truth is anything that arises from causes and condition. Functioning things that arise from causes and conditions are considered to be ultimate truths. And then in opposition to that, things which are permanent, which are non-functioning, are considered to be conventional truths. So for them, anything which arises is dependent upon causes and conditions is an ultimate truth, whereas something which does not rely upon causes and conditions is a conventional truth.
Oh yeah, that 도대바당 치람마에 된담된바 시디점바 남진간주다 내루 동반이라 쓰기요 말에 도대바다 된다 치람마에 주다 오만이기 된담 남진간주 셈점바 연제기 된담된바 쓰는다 내루 동반이라 쓰기요래 다 도대바다 치람마에 아니 다 도대비 된담된바 변의 천시는 오버 참마 된담된바래 딱바 참마 군접된바래 인장 된담된바 시디점바 치라마도 도대베 동반이라 쓰기요 말다 셈점바 연제기 된담된바 쓰는 데는 동반이라 시기래.
So here then for the Great Exposition School and the Sutra School, ultimate truth does not refer to emptiness. For them, they have a different understanding of ultimate truth, and it isn't in reference to emptiness. Whereas for the mind-only school and above, all of those schools which come above the mind-only school, they assert that emptiness is ultimate truth. But for, if we look at, say for example, the Sutra School, ultimate truths are functioning things, are things, and that's not in reference to emptiness, but rather anything which is a functioning thing is an ultimate truth, whereas something which is permanent is a conventional truth. So it's only for the mind-only school and above that ultimate truth is in reference to emptiness.
오야, 다 셈점베 아니 된담된바 쓰는다. 동반이 시나 지민로 덴바 투비 동발라 시기요 말에 치료 텐도 투비 동반이 여러 치 송진 재생기 동반이 아니 치료 텐도 투비 동반이 양나다 가상나 신체니 아니 랑진 도비 수다 랑진 도비 신시 랑기 천이기 투비 동반이 어디죠 다 숭당 수지미 참마 재생기 동바데 된담된바 아니 양나 치료 텐도 투비 수저지나 빼나 스타트 풍바다 가와이나레 쪽제다 간제 이나야 태블라소바 아니 랑 치료 텐도 코랑 치료 텐도 마주바데 코랑기 땡기 똥니데 내루 텐담템바데 오 딘데질라 샤기레 다 군접 템바 시디 아니 다 텔레 셴바 텐담템바레 셴비 체디졸라 아니 군접
So then for the Sutra school, as we have seen earlier in the week, they have, not the Sutra school, the mind-only school. Here they assert ultimate truths to be emptiness, and here this is referring to the fact that an external object and the valid cognition, the mind perceiving that, are empty of being established as substantially different entities. So for them, ultimate truth is referring to that emptiness, the ultimate way that things are, their ultimate nature, in that things appear to us as though they were established as external objects, but really there is a lack of difference in substantial entity between an object and the perceiving consciousness. And so for them, that is what defines an ultimate truth, is an object being empty of being a separate entity from the perceiving consciousness. And then for them, things that are not ultimate truths then fall into being conventional truths. So other than that lack of difference in entity between subject and object, all other things are then considered to be conventional truth.
다 다진 제자마위 텐담데 템바데들 도디비데 디즈 텐담템바데 차와 도디비 텔레 아니 심잠비 데기 텐담데 템바데 차와 다디니야 투다스스 야야레디 아니 텐담템바데 차루 도고요.
So we can see here that the ultimate truth as posited by the Great Exposition School is a more coarse kind of understanding, and when you move to the Sutra School, it's a little bit more of a subtle understanding of ultimate truth. And then when one moves on to the mind-only school, it's a more subtle understanding still. So as one progresses through the various tenet schools, the understanding gets more and more subtle and refined.
다 랑지비 텐담템바 다 semzambe 오다 semzambe 아니 다 텐담템바 될라다 치료 텐도 추베 똥와당 아니 강사기 담면이 샤고 다 강다자 치료 텐도 추베 똥비 똥이당 강사기 다기 똥비 똥이 랑제 투비 제기 똥비 똥이 니데 아니 텐담템바당 텔레 셴비모 최창마다 군접템바.
So for the mind-only school, then, the emptiness of a subject and object being is established as different substantial entities, as well as they also posit as the selflessness of the person being absent of being a self-sufficient substantial entity. So that kind of emptiness is also an ultimate truth. So other than those ultimate truths, this lack of difference in entity between subject and object, and the person being empty of being a self-sufficient substantial entity, everything other than that for the mind-only school is then a conventional truth.
오야 다 디네 야치니 다 랑지비 투다갑수 다 텐담템바다 군조템바 알라디 다 텐담템바 시디잠바다 아니 템바 투비에 똥바텔라 시고레 템바 투바 시디잠바다 semzamba menjegi ngobo changma dendu khe lengi yorede ta dini ya charu droni ani thendam demba sidi zamba ta ani ta demba chubye tongba nila khogegi yore inzi zamba ta pa chetamje loyu wangi shaba maimba rat yurangi deluji ngene chubye tongba de nganzola nangdi zambata loyu ngene pa shaba maimba yu khorang chikbe ngene chubaji nangi yore de temba chuba nangi yore tenda du zimbate temba chuba zimbare injang dindeji yo mares loyu pa mashapa yu khorang chikbe ngene chubaji ani yo mare kesi dindeji yoba zimbam dindeji yoba tongwa ina di dendubres tongwa sigure nangwa ina ta di dendubre di yo mare di mebate ani 각 텐담템바레 아니 넬루 타두데레 세오다 란지베 텐담템바스나 딜라시고레 셴바 창마 아니 군조템바.
So then when one moves to the middle way autonomy school, here they assert ultimate truth to be the lack of true existence. So here, the mind-only school and below, they assert that things are truly existent. That is something that they accept. But here, when you get to the middle way autonomy school, they assert that things are not truly existent. Although they appear to us as though they had some kind of true existence, they don't really exist in that way. So here, objects appear to us as though they had some kind of existence solely from their own side, as if they were able to set themselves up and existed totally independent of the perceiving consciousness. So the appearance of objects as though they were existent completely from their own side without having to depend upon appearing to a non-defective mind, that kind of appearance is the appearance of true existence. And when we grasp, when we apprehend objects to appear in that, or to exist as they appear, then that is the grasping at true existence. So here they would posit that that lack of true existence is emptiness, is an ultimate truth, and everything other than that falls into being a conventional truth.
Oh yeah. That the Rangibe Deni Dembani Dezuti Teche. Ani, that Tanjue Yang Dine, Ani Dine Charu Dore. Tanjue Rangibi Pena Gaja Sure, Tendam Dembade, Loi Pa Shakba Maimba, you ranging in a Truba de Yo Mare Mado. Ani loi pa shakzam re sigiyo mare. Loi pa shakba maimbi yu ranging ene tuba yo mare. Te yu ranging ene tuba tang loi pa shakba chik yore si. Ani rangiwe sigiyo re. Ta tanjuwe ani dinje yo mares. Loi pa shakba tang ranging ene tuba siye chik ni yo mares. Loi ene shakba chikpo re mato Kesi ranging ene tuba chik tsu yena, ani ta di temba tuba re, ani di gakcha re. Ta dindegi loi pa shakpa tsam maimba, ta loi pa shak tsam jire mato rangene tuba, rangi ngoe tuba jie meba inzang, ani ta che tamje rangi ngoe tuba tongba de tendam temba tartuk. Ani rangi tsenyi matuba sinante, rangi ngoe matuba tela, ta tendam temba tartuk sigiyore. Ani tele shenpa tizo, ani tanjuwe kunzop temba.
So then when one moves to the consequentialist school, the subtlety of the understanding of the two truths gets even more subtle, more refined. And so for the middle way autonomy school, they say that objects are posited by mind, but they don't use this merely posited by mind. For the autonomy school, there needs to be some part of this that comes from the side of the object. It's not exclusively or only from the side of the object, but there is the perceiving consciousness that posits that phenomena, and then there is something from the side of the object, and that leads to the perception of it. But for the consequentialist school, they say that all phenomena are merely posited by mind. So there's no sort of essential existence, inherent or intrinsic existence from the side of the object, but rather all phenomena are merely posited by mind. And any sort of existence above that, beyond that, is considered to be the object of negation. So there's no kind of inherent or intrinsic existence from the side of the object, but rather phenomena are merely posited by mind. And this is the way that the consequentialist school posits ultimate truth, is that lack of true existence, lack of essential or inherent existence that one comes to realize, and everything other than that is then posited to be conventional truth according to the consequentialists.
Oh yeah, that tenda kandarja tuta shi tendam demba sieki, ani tendam demba Quran la an mandawa yore tendam sieki tendam demba sieki tendam demba la de la kojuni yoro tendam gi ngola demba sieki pena dodebe tendam ko tendamba inzu de karesna gyule jena gyule jeba inzang ane tendamba ro ten tamba la de ten tamba temba re se de ju temba chuba chiki kewa inzang ani ju de la ten tamba chiki kewa inzang ani tendam se chagi yore ro cheda ma wa dizo ki tendam se de ta korang ani tendam temba la de chomba da shigba la chomshik la tena rang zimbi lo torwa da midowi chane ro chomba da shigba ti tsena ani rang zimbi lo torwa ina ne tate ko ten tamba chagi yoro ten tamba rang zimbi mare kunzop chagi yore rang zimbi lo mido ayina ten tamba chagora ta rangji badang semzamba yenje ki ten tamba laye de gyudang chashe dinde kan dewa yo mare ro pena chedamawe chashe de dorsona chashe saye yo na ten tamba re siore dodebe gyule jena ten tamba re siore gyu ta ten tamba le chungwa inzang ten tamba kewa gyu ten tamba le kewa inzang ten tamba siye de gyula gyu yeme le ta 아니 semzamba yenjeki ten tamba laye de ta lo pakpi ta semzamba kurangi tupdagi luchena ani pakpi nyamsha yishi de la sigor ta semzamba uma rangji ba ani uma tanjuwa de ten tamba laye de lo yujen lo pakpi nyamsha yishi la ani tamba ten tamba che di ngola ani tongba ni di zo temba di ngola ngosumdu an nangwam di ngola ta yoba inzang pabi nyamsha ishiji ngola ani tongba ni di zo yoba inzang ani di ngor temba temba laiki tendamde ani ya yujen pabi nyamsha ishila sigi wa inzang yujen ki tendamde la yang chara yores charasina mindawa
So here then, the four Tenon schools have different ways of understanding what is meant by ultimate truth. This word ultimate truth takes on a different kind of connotation for each of the schools. So here, according to the Sutra school, for something to be ultimately true or existent is referring to the fact that it arises from causes and conditions. So a functioning object arises from a truly existent cause, and that leads to a truly existent result. And so those things are ultimately existent. They're ultimately true. These objects that are based upon causes and conditions, this is what they are referring to with ultimate truth. That is what the Sutra school is trying to reference, that things are arising from causes. That is their nature of their existence. And so then when you look at the Great Exposition School, they refer to ultimate truths as that which is ultimately true in the sense that the awareness of it can't be canceled out by breaking up or destroying the object. So whatever is left when one isn't, you don't cancel out the awareness of something by breaking it up. What's left when you are still able to perceive the smallest partless particles, those are ultimate truths. So when you have something where you can break it up and then the awareness of it is canceled, that is a conventional truth. But when something is not able to be canceled out by breaking it up any farther or destroying it, that is what you get to with ultimate truth. Now, for the mind-only school and above, ultimate truth is really getting at what is recognized, what is understood in the context of an Arya's meditative equipoise. So for these schools, then, there is a subjective element to ultimate truth, as well as the object emptiness, the kind of understanding that subjective awareness is coming to. So the mind, which directly apprehends emptiness, this is what they are getting at with ultimate truth, that you're getting at the ultimate nature or way that things actually exist. So for the mind-only school, the middle way autonomy school, the consequentialist school, when they refer to ultimate truth, it's referring to as well the kind of realization that occurs in the meditative equipoise of an Arya. So this is a more subtle sort of understanding of ultimate truth than you see in the two lower tenet schools.
오야 다 딘데인자 다 춥다 시가라 티네 대니기 남샤 만자와 요아 인자 텐담dem비 남샤 만자와 딘데인자 다 우미따와 춥다 소시 우미따와 요라 춥다 소시 우미따와양 아니 우미따와 다 만자와 요레 베나 다 도데바도이나 우미따와데 칸데질라 샤기레스나 우미따와데다 미따바 또빌로데다 우미따와 타르두데레 도데바당 다 치라마 어디저기 우미따와 타르뚝데 미따바 또빌로데레 코저기 다 아니 딱제기 타니 세위 우마데 칸 딱제기 타니데 그래서나 제부 춥디 유데 마강나 딱달라 흉와 오늘 전에 제부 춥디 유데 가고로 유데 매바 차고래 다 제부 춥디 유데 매바 마차와 진데바이나 유데 두 삼바이나 아니 딱다 간이스나 제부 춥디야 유데 라데나 유데 딱바래 딱바 차기로 오늘 전에 제부 춥디 유데 가고래 유데 미딱바이나 인장 제부 춥디 다 개시 제부 춥디 유데 마각바 진바이나 아니 딱달 흉와래 하고서 간이스나 아니 규지에 매바 딱바네로 양 유데 각디 제부데 마중나 채달을 흉와래 유데 각디 제부 춥고래 하고서 유데 춥디 제부데 가고래 다 니니 파 깡네 제부 춥디 주 각바 주 마각바데 파까 다 주각바데 또 주각디 제부 춥바데 또 소나 다디 우밀람 타르두데 디레스 다 강다장 제부 춥디 주각바다 주춥디 제부 주각디 제부 충와 똥비 다 딘디기 다 조다 미닥바데레 조 깨지래다 깨지 니바 오다디 미닥바 똥빌로데 다 도데바다 체라마 어디저기 다 우미따와데 딜라스기 요레스 조 미닥바 똥빌로데레
So each of the four tenet schools then, due to having different kind of presentations of the two truths, have different understandings of ultimate truth. So these are degrees of subtlety of their views. And here then there are also ways in which each of the four schools presents the view of the middle way, what for them it means to eliminate an extreme of eternalism and an extreme of total non-existence or annihilation. So for them, for the lower tenet schools, for example, the Sutra school, the way in which they find the middle way is actually by realizing impermanence, by realizing subtle impermanence. They are able to come to an understanding which eliminates both the extreme of permanence, according to them, and the extreme of annihilation. So for the Sutra school, because it is the case that when a cause gives rise to an effect, that cause is extinguished or is destroyed. That, for them, eliminates the extreme of permanence. So by recognizing this subtle impermanence, the way that a cause leads into an effect, and that in turn means the destruction of that cause. The cause doesn't remain after it gives rise to an effect. For them, that means that they have avoided the extreme of permanence. By the fact that that cause disintegrates or is destroyed upon giving rise to an effect, you then have avoided the extreme of permanence or having some sort of eternal existence. Now, because when that cause gives rise to an effect, the effect is established, it exists, it comes into being, then they say that you have then avoided the extreme of annihilation or total non-existence. So for them, the way that they come to understand the middle way, which is able to avoid any extreme of permanence or annihilation, is actually through this understanding of subtle impermanence and the way in which by a cause giving rise to an effect, the fact that the cause is then destroyed or goes away eliminates permanence, and the fact that the effect is established eliminates the possibility of total non-existence.
오야 다 디첸 다 semzambage ani takda da cheta tondo da takda da cheta sina de tondo da kunde tad ani takje gi ta chawi umi lamde takje da thani da chawi umi lamde ta nangsibi zela mateba ani nang시비 제라 마데바 아니 다 치료라 숭예지 여바이나 숭 치료도 여바직 진데기에나 라니 딱비탈라 흉와 그래서는 낭시비 제라 마데바 치료 빼나 낭시비 제라 마데비 치료기 체 간데지 예나양 아니 다 치료 텐도 주바차고 딘드직 짐바이나 다 딱비탈라 흉도고 ngobo 탐제 간제진 나와 가르진 나와 이나야 디조 장마 소시 아니 셈기 띵기 박자셔봤다 셈스나 조 셈잠베다 투모마인 바 퀸시세지 켈링기오라 박자 퀸지시 양나 렌데 퀸지시 박자 퀸지시 오 딘드기 셈데라 시추이 셈데라 퀸시시고로 오 딘드기 퀸시 난기 아니 딘드기 다 치료기 체 나야기 박자데 야 세네 아는 만돌라 난기 요레스 딘드 인자 기 나야기 유대당 아니 디기 셰바니 나야기 낭제기 미기 셰바이나레 딘니데 다 제직 치료 텐도 마두바 계시 딘드직 치료 텐도 주바 진선은 딜라 딱바다와 양 아니 낭시비 제라 마데비 제 가르소레 치료 텐도 마투바 이레데 양 치료 텐도 마투바나 낭시비 제점도 여바 딱 바자세비 또블레 치료 텐도 마투바레 때네 요 말했으나 아니 체다 때네 매바 마인바 치료 텐도 양 마투바 베나 수달라 소바디조 때네 매바 양 마인바 치료 텐도 양 마투바 오다 딘드직라 아니 우미람스고레 딱 디톡빌로텔라 치료 텐도 마투병 낭시비 제점도 여바 똑빌로텔라 우미타와 스기오레
아니 낭기 셰바디 템바투바레로
셰바데 템바투바레 셰바 템바투바레
So then moving to the mind-only school and the way that they find freedom from the extremes. So here when it's saying the view of the middle way, we can say it's avoiding the extremes of some kind of permanence or annihilation. Or you can use the words like reification, exaggeration of existence, or denial, denigration of existence. These are the kind of extremes that they are avoiding in their particular view. So according to the mind-only school, if you grasp, we all grasp at things as though they were established as external objects. Although they aren't truly, in reality, a different substantial entity than the consciousness perceiving them, we perceive objects as though they were external objects. But if they were established as external objects, that would fall into the sort of extreme of permanence or of reifying some kind of existence for them. So the fact that they are not a different substance than the perceiving consciousness, they aren't a different substantial entity from the consciousness which perceives them, this for them is the way that they avoid the extreme of permanence. So we grasp at external things as though they were established as a different substantial entity from the perceiving consciousness, but the fact that they lack that type of existence, the fact that they are really just the sort of awakening of imprints on our consciousness. And here the mind-only school accepts something called a foundational consciousness that not all of these schools accept. And they say that it is due to the awakening, the imprints that have been laid down on that foundational consciousness, then give rise to a perceiving subject as well as a perceived object. And the lack of there being substantially different entities is for them emptiness. And the fact that there are no external objects avoids then the extreme of reification or the extreme of permanence. But then the fact that because we have these imprints on our foundational consciousness, and from that state, from the awakening of these imprints, we perceive objects and we have this perceiving subject, we have a consciousness that is perceiving that, they avoid the extreme of total annihilation or of a denigration or denial denial of existence because that consciousness exists. They don't deny the existence of that. So in that way, they say they are avoiding the extreme of total non-existence because for them, this consciousness, along with the imprints that have been placed on it, are existent. Their existence is not being denied.
Oh yeah, that rangjibada tanjua dizo umaba dizo that tembatuba siede ani tanya duya ke melemba denge tanya duya midebi ani tudama yu kansa dela ani umaba sigiora namji umabi tudama yu chede denge tanya duya midebi ani ta tekjenji tudama yu kansa sina digre odila umaba sigiora kantarja rangibe ta rangi tsenyi ji tubala soba ke lena yang ta rangi tsenyi ji tuba rangshin ji tuba rangene tuba takdenza ne nye yoba dinde ina yang ani 다 덴바 투바 시에지 요 말에 덴바 투스디 낭주다 내주 팀비 체지 다 낭주다 내주 팀비 체지 요 말에 낭주다 내주 미팀바 인장 덴바 마투바레 오다 랑지비 덴바 마투비 균제 조데 아니 카르수레 덴바 마투비 균제 조데다 낭주다 내주 미팀바당 아니 가랭고 다 규진을 깨봐다 오 딘데기 떡기다 덴바 마주바 켈랭기요레 마도 아니 랑기 쳔니지 투바당 랑신지 투바시에도 또 딱된자는 예요바 시에도 켈랭기요레 다이 강다장 덴바르 마주 덴바르 메바당 타녀도 이어바데 아니 우마 덴바르 캐시 덴바르 이어바지나 딱달라 숭마레 양 덴바르 메바레 타녀도야 메바레 라나 아니 쳇달라 숭마레 아니 다 디니파 사니 덴바르 메나양 다 타녀도 요레 시에기다 춥다스나미도 따와텔라 우미 따와
So then moving to the proponents of the middle way. So the middle way schools, including the autonomy school and the consequentialist school, both of these assert that there are no truly existent phenomena, not even conventionally speaking. So here they refute some kind of true existence, and here true existence is referring to things, phenomena appearing in the way that they actually exist. So here, their mode of appearing would have to accord or be in harmony with the way that they actually exist. And because for the proponents of the middle way, things appear as though they had some kind of existence which they don't actually have, their way of appearing and the way that they actually exist is discordant. So for them, they say that phenomena are truly or not truly existent, and so the fact that they don't have the kind of existence that they appear to have, so phenomena appear to us as though they had some kind of true existence, but the fact that they lack that for the middle way schools, that is what clears away the extreme of permanence, of some kind of reified existence. So that if they were truly existent, then you would fall into the extreme of permanence if it were the case that phenomena actually existed as they appear. But that's not the case, so they avoid that extreme. And then they say, well, but things are conventionally existent. If you were to deny even conventional existence, then that would fall into an extreme of complete denial or annihilation. So for them, both of the middle way schools, although there are some differences between them, like the autonomy school accepting intrinsic existence and so forth, here they both say that there is no true existence, that phenomena appear truly existent but don't actually exist that way, and therefore you avoid the extreme of permanence. And because things are conventionally existent, we can't totally deny their existence, you avoid the extreme of annihilation.
Oh yeah, that tanjua, that dine da tarung ani that kapchasina midu umadi tawa de taru drone ta rangibe temba tuba yo mare siegi temba tuba ke milemba da chigbare de inaya temba tubi tubzu de mandawa tubjesina midu di mandaware ta rangibe ani rangshinji tuba inaya temba tubko mare siore rangshinji tuba inaya rangu ngene tuba inaya ani temba tuko mares ta tawadire ta rangibe temba chetamje temba matubare de chetamje rangi ngene tubare taktenjana nye yores 다 단주에 딱된자네 녀바당 아니 민파 딱바잠 마인바 다른 자네 녀주여바 식당 아니 딘데서 랑경에네 투비 차셰도지 여바이나 유코랑경에네 아니 투비에 근니바도지 여바이나 다 딘데기 유데 아니 템바 투고레 딘데 지여 말에서 랑경에네 뭐보 체스 간지지나 코랑경에네 투비에 니바지 켄요 말에서 자자자담바 창마 로이파 샥바담레 마도 자자자담바 로이다 똑베서 바도지 똑베 딱보지 마도 코랑경에네 똑베 마샥바스나 되게 코랑경에네 추투비에 니바지 지요 말에 매바 인장 아니 체탐제 랑신지 마투바레 아니 랑신지 동바레스 계시랑신지 딘데기 코랑경에네 투바 예바 진소나 디 딱비 탈라 흉도기레 딱다레스 다 랑신기 요 마레스 다 랑신기 매바이나 오나다 체탐제 매바 인격이 두냠도 삼나 아니 양 체달라 흉바레스 다 랑신기 매나양 아니 간지지 예주데 간지지 요레스나 다 숙저지나 빼나 다 민도 뭐보지기다 강사 시에도지나야 강사 랑신지 매나양 아니 시직라 때네 딱비 아니 민장스 다 민점식 타녀점 다 맞다 마송나 민감보스고라 민장 다 된자는 예 매바 아니 민장바직라 아니 레준데라 소바 차장 제기 니바 여바텔라 아니 다 갈수록 군접도 여봐서 어딘지 개시 랑신지 요 말에서 랍용디 다체 탐제 매바 인사레 냠도 삼나 아니 디체다 다 디니 빵네 랑신지 여바양 마이 랑신지 매장 때네 매바양 마이 바 딘지 아니 따주텔라 아니 우미타와 단주이 우미타와 시에티레
So here, the middle way consequentialist school takes a more subtle view of the middle way and what it means to be truly existent than the middle way autonomy school. So they have a different sort of measure of what it means to be truly existent between the middle way autonomy school and the middle way consequentialist school. So for the autonomy school, they assert that things are intrinsically existent. There is something from the side of the object. Although we have to have it appearing to a non-defective mind, they say that there is something from the side of the object that is intrinsically, inherently existent. And if you actually search within the basis of designation for the thing so designated, it is findable. That is, for them, a necessary prerequisite of existence, that something be findable within its basis of designation. But for the consequentialist school, they say that there is no such intrinsic existence. There is no existence from the side of the object whatsoever. And if you search for the thing designated within the basis of designation, it is unfindable. There's no way to actually find that thing designated. It's merely posited by mind. It's merely a name or a designation, a convention that has been applied to a particular basis. And you can't find any existence above and beyond that. So for them, they negate there being any sort of intrinsic existence. For them, whatever is existent for the consequentialist school is necessarily lacking intrinsic existence. It's not truly existent, and there is no existence from the side of the object, only from the side of the object. So for them, this is the way that they avoid the extreme of permanence. If it were the case that things had some kind of intrinsic existence, that if you were to search within a basis of designation and find the thing designated, then you would fall into the extreme of permanence, of exaggerating the existence of things. And so for them, this is how they avoid that extreme, is by saying that things are merely posited by mind. They're mere names, mere designations. There's no way to point to an actual thing from the side of the object that's intrinsically existent. But even though phenomena all phenomena are not intrinsically existent, even though they lack that, that does not mean they are totally non-existent. If you take something like, for example, a person, which is designated on a particular basis on the aggregates, that person is not intrinsically existent, but they are conventionally existent. They are existent in name only. And even though that's how they exist, cause and effect is totally functional. We experience the results of the karma that we have created and so forth, and everything functions within that level of conventional existence. So this is how they avoid then falling into the extreme of annihilation. It's not that things are totally non-existent, but within that state of lacking intrinsic existence, they appear to us and they function perfectly fine. That's what it means for them to be conventionally existent. So here, for the middle way consequentialist school, they avoid the extremes of permanence and annihilation through this presentation of the way that things exist.
Oh yeah, that 강다르자 다 데니 조주 만다위 왕기 투다실라 데니 조주 만다위 왕기 다 다음에 차라레기요 다 다음에 차라시한다 다 뒤에서 당사 말에 강다르자 텔라 때네 아니 도데비 땅에 베나 강사 데니 데주 만다와라 때네 강사기 강사 타녀도 조주 만다와 왕 타녀도 당 텐담도 조주 만다위 왕기 강사기 오딜라 제바 채용디 아니 강사다 체지 오라 제바 채용디 아니 강사기 조주 아니 강사 타녀도 예주 간데 예메 제바 채용디 아니 텔라 때네 강사 다메기 조주 강사기 다메기 조주 차라레기요래 아니 체기 오데 군조 타녀도 체 탐제 타녀도 예주기 오라 제바 채용디 잠바 다 아니 텔라 때네 아니 다메 체기 다메 차라 세데 레기요레스
치다 마원도 데바디 저기 담에기
다 강다르자 치지 다케 랭겐데 치다케 랭겐데 아니 치라마와도 도데바 니체 체제 드즈기 체다케 랭기요다 다 강사기 담에데 아니 주다 시각이 켈렘바체 치지 담에데 셈잠바 또 우마랑지바 탄주어 숨기 치지 담에 켈레 아니 도데바다 치라마와기 치지 다케 랭기레 치지 다케 렌주데 렌고이 균젠데 카레스나 아니 강사기 다 메바다 체 다도 강사 다도 마두바다 체 다도 투바 시디즘바 아니 치지 다메기 쪽주당 아니 강사기 다메기 쪽주 아니 수수수 티모 마임바 요라 다징이 군족기 쪽주 만다위 왕기 그라
So the way that the individual tenant schools posit the two truths then leads into the different ways that they come to understand selflessness. So through examining the nature of objects, the nature of the person, and the nature of phenomena and so forth, they come to different understandings of what it means to be selfless, to lack a kind of self, or to be empty and so forth. And so it's based upon the way that they posit the two truths that then the various views of how you posit selflessness arise. So when they examine the basis of the nature of the person and come to refute a certain type of existence of the person, that is the selflessness of the person. And so the various schools come to a different kind of understanding of what that selflessness is, what kind of existence that person is lacking, and so forth. And then when they turn to the examination of phenomena and looking at how phenomena appear to exist and how they actually exist and so forth, they come to determine the meaning of the selflessness of phenomena. So according to the understanding of the two lower tenant schools, the Great Exposition School and the Sutra School, they only assert a selflessness of the person. For them, phenomena have a self, have that kind of existence. And this again comes from the way that they understand the two truths. But for the Sutra School and the Great Exposition School, they only posit the selflessness of persons. They don't have an idea of the selflessness of phenomena, because they actually do assert that phenomena have some kind of a self. But then you get up to the mind-only school, the middle way autonomy school, and the middle way consequentialist school, and they assert both a selflessness of the person and the selflessness of phenomena.
오야 다 강다자 체지 다켈렌주데 체지 다켈렌비 균젠데 카레레스는 남진 간저 체다마와다 도대바니 체다켈렌기요레 체지 다켈렌주데 다 카레레스나 치대양 켈레 덴주비양 켈레 랑기 체니지 랑기네 랑네네 투바양 켈레 디숨데 켈레서나 다 체다켈렌 렘바 저기요레 치대 켈레 덴바 투바 켈레 랑신지 투바 켈레 디숨데 켈레 소나 아니 체다 켈레 카이스나 도데바다 체다마기 치대 켈렌기 요레 아니 덴바 투바 켈렌기 요레 랑신지 투바 켈 카이스나 치데데 셈잠비 가자레 디 켈렌기 요레 덴바 투바 랑지비 가자레 디 켈렌기 요레 랑신지 투바 탄주이 가자레 디 켈레 강다장 각자 숨데 아니 켈레 소나 숨가 켈레 야 찍켈레 찍켈말레나 치다 켈렌빙에와 각자 숨데 숨가 켈렌겐기 강사지나 다 디기 치된 켈렌기 요레스 워 남지.
No. So, according to the two lower schools, the Vaibhashikas, the Great Exposition School, and the Sutra School, they accept these three things, these three types of existence that are actually refuted by or are the objects of negation for the higher tenant schools. So, the Vaibhashikas and the Sutra School, they accept external objects, they accept true existence, and they accept intrinsic existence. And so because they accept all of those things, they actually are positing a self of phenomena. They are accepting a self of phenomena. So for the mind-only school, external objects are the object of negation, the object of refutation. And this is something that the Sutra School and the Great Exposition School accept. They also accept true existence, which is the object of negation for the middle way autonomy school. And they also accept intrinsic existence, which is the object of negation for the consequentialist school. So rather than negating some kind of a self of phenomena, they embrace it. They accept that there is some kind of self of phenomena.
Oh yeah, that don't joke to Mangwe. That question
No. So you've gone on for a while now. So maybe if we take some questions. Most of the questions that I have received from people seem, I don't know if they want to ask Rinpoche. Some of these don't actually go with this here. Do you have a question that's related to this? Yeah, I'll take back there.
Can you explain the difference or talk a bit more about the word merely and when something is positive, the mind posits an object and when the mind merely posits an object. So it's a bit different.
Okay. So just in case not everybody heard that, so here the question is about using this word mere, so being merely posited by mind versus being posited by mind and what that mere is getting at. Is that what you're, yeah. So the shakpa Loi shakpa dan le pa shakpa tsam di tsam da di ten kares.
Oh, that tsam la kui junzen de loi shakpa siya de rangjibia ke lingyure. Che tamje loi pa shakpa res. Loi pa shaksti oh pagi di dire samyaji yora. Pena oh di tebre samdi zamba teps na dire samyade an tepde loi pa shakpa. Loi shaks di tio nyamdu samyong di zamba loi pa shakpa sigyore. Ani tanjuwe loi shakpa tsam la di ani oh di tebre siya de lo chikpoki shakpa re ma do yuji ngene tebi yinpa chik tubiya yo ma res. Digi tsamra di di cheki yore. Pena dindaji yora. Tanjuwe ani tanda loi shakpa da loi shakpa tsamji tanjuwi loi shakpa tsamdang rangjibe loi shakpa nila chepa yora tanjuwi loi shak tsamla de pena 공다 남사 수마루 딘들라 아니 탁바 타타질라 두두 냠도 삼용디 신앙 제기요라 두두 파기 두레 섬에데 로이파 쿠랑기 자자 자탐바 소소 강반나라 두이여바데 아니 자자 자탐바 소소기 셈디세요 바레 남도키 마도 강빈나라 두기 예라 제요 말에 두기 고요 말에 강바요 말에 락바요 말에 타나베 두기 갈라오다
랑콜라파요 말이스
말에 강반나로라 두기 차셔치예요 말에 딱 갈라오다 두기다 두기 고다 수보다 다 가도다 입다 스케꾸지요 말에 이나양 두두 냠도 삼에데 로 찍보기에네 샤바라마도 유 탁탁이에네 두기 아니 수보다 고다 제요 말에 어디 아니 로이 파샥잠세데 유징에네 추투비에 메바데체 다랑집에 아니 로이 샤바당 유징에네 투바 니가 레스 페나 주시 대신데 주시 대신라나 대신당 주시 대신이 디즈 카가레 대신라나 신다 디즈 상말 라이로 신충중다 또 충중 디즈 라이로 다 주시 대신라 디즈 막 주마켄지 나 잡차위 신이나르 도이나지 요로 어딜라 주시 대신스로 다디 아니 다 땡게기에나 단난기레 잘라 치타만다 이 메도 땡게기에나 메도 땡 통기레 어디 나 잡차위 딘데기 주시대 주시 대신 달랑도 나와대. 다 주시 대신 하코사. 근데 달랑 따달랑보지 나와이나 소싱에 장 파기는 따 랑보체직도 냠도 삼. 나 주마켄디양 나제잡. 나제잡니 아니 대신 대랑경에 내장 뉴바직 나에게 뉴바 니초네 아니 달랑 나와레스. 달랑 예주대. 오 근데 인자 로이 샤바당 아니 랑에네 투바 니조레스. 단주에 딘데 말에 랑에네 요 말에 로이 샤바치보레 탁발라 두타와 나시레 소 디스고로.
So here there is a really important difference between the way that the middle way autonomy school would say that things are posited by mind, and then the consequentialists saying that things are merely posited by mind. So here for like the autonomists, when they say that things are merely posited by mind, or that things are posited by mind, not merely. So say for example you see a book and you have the thought, oh, that's a book. So that thought, thinking, oh, this is a book, is what posits, what establishes the existence of that. But there has to be something from the side of the object, some sort of existence from the side of the object, and then you have this mind thinking, oh, that's a book. And so those two coming together create the perception of the thing. There is some thing from the side of this that it's bookness or something, it's inherently existent as a book, and then our mind is positing, oh, this is a book. So that thought, oh, this is a book, is what is intended by, they're saying that things are posited by mind, that you have to have something from the side of the perceiving consciousness in order to establish the existence of something. But for the consequentialist school, they say that things are merely posited by mind. So when we think, oh, this is a book, there's nothing inherently existent from the side of that object that is causing us to think this is a book, like with some sort of truly existent book, but rather the positing of that is merely due to the force of the mind thinking, oh, this is a book. So to go through the classic example of this, there are two examples used to distinguish between these two types of how things being merely posited by thought and things being posited by thought. So the example of the consequentialist system, where something is merely posited as thought, is like if it's dark, it's kind of like late at night or something, and you see a rope that has been like coiled up, and you think, oh my God, it's a snake, and that thought thought it's a snake, there's nothing from the side of the object there's no snakeness there. But when you think, oh, this is a snake, you then give rise to fear and so forth, and there are real reactions that come about because of that, of your mind having posited, oh, this is a snake. And so although there's nothing whatsoever intrinsically from the side of the object, there's no, if you were to search, there's no snake parts whatsoever. There's nothing like a snake head or a snake tail or, I don't know, I'm not sure about hands and feet, but no snake parts whatsoever there. But yet your mind posits, oh, there's a snake, and due to that positing a snake, you give rise to fear and so forth. So that's the way that consequentialists, the example that they give to illustrate how things are merely posited by mind, that there's nothing whatsoever intrinsically from the side of the object, but are merely thinking, or on the basis of that coiled up rope, oh, that's a snake, we give rise to fear and so forth. Whereas the example that's used to illustrate the way that the autonomists think about this and things being posited by mind, not merely posited by mind, is the example of an illusionist conjuring things up. And we don't really have this tradition in our culture, but in Indian culture, apparently, you had to have a special sort of object that was the basis for conjuring something. So you have like a special stone or a stick or something, and a magician says some kind of mantra over that. And so that is what creates the appearance of, say, a horse or an elephant. And so you have both this basis, which has been like treated with a mantra or some sort of special kind of saying, and then you have the perception from the side of the person who's viewing this illusion. So there's something from the side of the object. There's some, the illusionist has done something in order to conjure up an illusory horse or elephant or whatever. And then you, as the person viewing this, see, oh, that's an elephant, or oh, that's a horse. And so there's something from the basis, from the side of the illusion, as well as from your perceiving consciousness. And they would say that there has to be some kind of intrinsic existence from the side of the object, along with your mind positing that thing. And those two have to come together to be able to posit the existence of something. So for them, they can't accept that things can be merely posited by mind, because they say there has to be some inherent intrinsic existence from the side of the object that you are perceiving with your consciousness, and those two coming together is what they assert. Whereas for the consequentialists, it's like this striped rope being mistaken for a snake. You think snake, but there's nothing whatsoever from the side of that object that is a snake. But yet the thought snake is there, and it can lead to fear and so forth. So that's the kind of example that they give to distinguish. Did that get at? Okay. Oh boy, we've got so many hands. I don't know whose question to go with next. So I'm going to need to read through the, okay. Oh, wow. Okay, I'm going to need a little bit of time for this question. Wow, okay. So I'll read this then. At the first moment of visual consciousness, all that appears is an uninterpretable field of observation which lacks defining characteristics. At the second moment, when the mental factors, including discrimination, begin to operate, phenomenal objects are extracted from this field of observation by the process of concept and naming. It can be said that phenomena are caused by the operation of concept and naming, yet the field itself lacking defining characteristics is empty of inherent existence. For the consequentialists, is this process of concept and naming by which objects appear to mind David, I'm going to need help. Sorry, I just can't read this one word. Appear to mind.
Consequentialist, this process of concept and naming by which objects appear to mind what is meant by conventional existence by dependent designation, yet while lacking inherent.
So for the consequentialist, is this process of concept and naming by which objects appear to mind what is meant by conventional existence by dependent designation, yet are lacking inherent existence? Oh boy. 아니, 표시잖아, 간속이 믹셀라 쑥 트러블 통두 쑥 당보 낭두 디 랑기 센니기 주바 낭기요레로 디르 톡베 파밍 타 요마레스 저기 왕식이 급수
나와다 람산직 따기요래 그 쪽보시오래 파기니 때문에 추즈의 미기 통화다 람산 추즈도 냠디 쪽보시오 간저기 디 죽바 카레레 죽바 레기라 차와디 배 쪽다치니 네 진투기요 말에 파기 추즈도 삼디 잠바 파기 추즈레 삼바디 왕식이 파기 추제래 삼기 말에 왕식이 입다 가도대 통화 직보 말로 파기 추제래 삼게인데 이시래 왕식이 통화다 이식이 아니 타냐 똑바 왕식이 통화되라 이식이 타냐 똑바 마도 왕식이 타냐 똑이 말에 왕식이 입다 가도대 나의 직보를 마도 파기 추제 두 삼게인데 이시래 되니라 나지 요래데 코니 쪽다치니 왕식이 쭉 테마타도 람상 깨직 니발라 이시데 죽바 인자 난증 연진 투기요 말 인자 왕식이 추제라오지 나와다 파기 추제레 셀로이파 추제 명다기요래
이네 추디 르팔 탁바디 추기 규레베스
로이파 땅에데 로데 체득이 주마래 체득 파기는 요로와 르 마당에라 요로와
마당에라 요
빼나 난족이 로 체다바지기 빼나 난졸라 잘라지스니 로아들 타니데 따고로 잘라지스 차와체 다 민카레 따고이나 빼나 부구지 깨와체 부구들라 다 민카레 따고이나 섬디 부구데 파게 요로와 부구데 요레데 부국이 있었다데 다시 됐으므로 다 체됐으디 다시데 파게 요래데 된다 너는 부국들라 제라 다 민카르다 와이나 베게 당에 베게란 다시 레도이나 된다 다시 민마다바도 다시 요 말에 다 로이 파 따와다 시네 다시 투브레마도 다시데 민마다비 녜래 요래 혹사 다시 민마다 녜래 요 말에 다시 세데 민따니 시니 투고래 타냐 도빌로 되게 제부리
저기 왕실라 디 덴바 투바 낭기요 탐제 덴바
체 대반 투바 랑기 천니 투바 낭기요라 왕시
덴바 투바 징기요래
징기요 말에
왕시데
왕시 덴바 투바 징기요 말에 덴바 투바 덴징 상마 이지시에 바래 덴바 투바 낭장 징기요 말 덴바 투바 징로 디 덴바 투바 레샤 냠도 삼겐데로 디 믹셰기 디기 삼로데 요 말에 믹셰시에데 왕시 디도 낭와 직부 마도 디 레샤 디 템버투바 레샤 디 야가 레샤 디 두가 레샤 시에다사 약두다 링둥다 토마다 다 가래 이나야 디 상마 타냐 동겐디 이지시 버래
이네 간소 랑신 세두디 템버투바게 랑신다고
다 랑신 시디 지당 랑신 라페나 망보요라 미탁비 랑신 시디 깨지깨지기 주어 도게나 고 미탁비 랑신이래 모스고래 로 미탁 깨지깨지기 주어 도기도나 고 주어 도기도나 고 미탁비 랑신 레샤스고래 다 단단 간조 랑신지 튜브 라에데 수직라 마테바 코란 튜바지라 하고사 지당 랑신 시나 지당 랑신 요래스나 지당 랑신 담만다 요라 미탁비 랑신 요래 수지 랑신 요래 다이 랑신 요래 다 담만다 요래 다 랑신지 투바래데 요래스나 데 랑신지 투바시에 라디 잠바 아니 셴라 마떼바 규진라 마떼바 딘디지 투비에 요래스고라 어디 요 말에스고라
So, David, I don't know that I'm fully getting at this question, but I'm going to do my best with what we have. So here, as it starts with the fact that when you have the first moment of a visual consciousness, so whatever appears to even our sense consciousnesses appears as though it were intrinsically existent or truly existent. And now, although it does appear that way to our sense consciousnesses, the sense consciousnesses aren't grasping at objects as being truly existent or existent by means of their own characteristics or intrinsically existent. But this process of going from a visual consciousness to the mental consciousness, which then labels or designates, defines those things, is so quick that most of us are totally, I mean, it seems like it's simultaneous with our seeing something and then calling it, naming it, designating it something. It seems almost as though it were simultaneous. But the mental labeling of things comes afterwards. But yet we don't say that mental labeling or positing of things is the cause of phenomena. So we can't posit it as being like phenomena exist because of being mentally labeled. The basis of designation of something is already out there. It's there. And then your visual consciousness perceives that. And then your mental consciousness grasps at it as though it were truly existent. That does the labeling sort of process. So before you posit something by means of thought, there's the basis of designation is there. So for example, if a child is born, that child doesn't come out of the womb with a name, or maybe it does, but well, you have to give it a name. So a child is born, and it's not born as Tashi, for example. You have to give the child the name Tashi, and then you have established this child is Tashi. It's been mentally designated as such. But it's not that the mental labeling caused that like physical baby to be there. The basis of designation was already there, but we can't speak of the existence of the child Tashi until the label is given, till you give that name Tashi to this basis of designation. But the basis of designation exists. It's already there. It's out there. It's not as though our labeling or designating things is the cause of that thing. And so here, I asked a little bit about, so all things are empty of inherent existence, and here where we say lacking defining characteristics, this gets a little, you have to sort of get into what is the nature of things, or this word rangshin. So there are different uses of the word rangshin. Like, conventionally speaking, things do have a nature. Like the nature of fire is that it's hot. That's a conventional truth. That is the way, like, things have natures. There are functional characteristics that we can perceive and put labels on. So it's not that things are like this totally undefined mess, I guess, or like this field lacking defining characteristics, but rather when we speak about things lacking inherent existence or lacking this true nature, we're talking about some kind of existence that is not contingent or reliant upon anything else whatsoever, including the consciousness perceiving it. So it's not that things don't have defining characteristics. I mean, on a conventional level, they do. There are things that distinguish them. There are different objects that we perceive, and then we give them these labels very, very quickly, but kunsobdu yeba di le takpa tsamla tene jungir
lo shakpa tsamde ta kunsobdu yezu dere
kunsobdu yezu di la tene jungir bes
su
di le pa matagna
yongi marwa lo pa takbi jela ani shini tubare
Shine Drupares.
Loi mata patu yo marangi tenda lain ba pugu de jena tashi se de pugu de la ming tashi
Shine
mata
Dakshi
ngela
Yores.
tashi yo ming mata ngela tashi yo marwa
Dakshi Yores.
tashi de yore tashi koran yang tashi se ming mata wi ngela tashi yo marwa
Oh.
ta ngobu khang dang ga tena shin pena tashi se de tashi de da phungbo de yore ina ya ming mata wi ngela khangba de nangla tashi de la mindu la ire mi chang mai ming ta wi chela o tashi de la o du phage dengi gal desha la ire o ming mata wi ngela yo mare ta ta na shin tashi de yang tashi se ming mata wi ngela tashi ji yo mare tashi se ming ji ta wi chela shini ming tu re ro
Yine le pam matakbe ngula di ngobo chi
tashi ji yo ro
le la nang Yores.
제자 로버지 난기 요래 따텔라시 아니 창마 따바로 다시지 난기 요래 모보지 난기 요래 다 모보 이나르 직 난기 요래 딜라직 따고로 다시라 때네 딱 라이디 뒤로 다시디 파기네 예고로 모보 탐제 탄주룰라 때네 딱바 잠레 시담바 때네 시디 다시직 라 때네 딱바 다시직 통네 아니 딱바 다시직 통네 아니 딜라 딱샤바 장자레 해소래 인전 다시 직년에 예고래 다양 다시 코라양 다시 시양 로이 마타빙엘라 다시 요 말와
So, sorry to just sort of cut off, but prior to designating things with a concept, with a name, we can't talk about their being existent. We can't, like, they're non-existent until we name them as such, but the words aren't coming out well. So, for example, with the baby, if you have a baby that's born, and you haven't given that baby a name, Tashi, then you can't, like, come up to that house and ask, oh, is Tashi here? Because there's no Tashi. You haven't given the name to that baby. But the basis of designation, the basis of designating that person as being Tashi has to appear to the mind before you're able to designate that Tashi. But everything is designated in this way. So the basis of designation too, until we designate it as a person or something, we can't speak of it existing. Like the process of designating is what allows us to speak of existence, to talk about things existing. So although we the saying, as you do here, that phenomena are caused by the operation of concept and naming, it's not like a cause of the existence of things, but to have a conventional existence, it is dependent upon designating things, upon giving them labels and names. I'm sorry, I don't know how much more I can. Okay, so we'll try to get to. Okay, I don't know. Think around So I'm getting a question here, but Kayleen, do you have? Okay, that would be great.
For those who don't attend schools that don't forward,
Yeah, just speak loud, Kayleen.
for those that attend schools that don't adhere to the emptiness of phenomena, do they not recognize the Heart Sutra as the words of the Buddha?
No, they the Chedra Dandodepa the Shejingido Kelengirbe.
켈링이 말해 최장 그것도 켈링 말해
No, they don't. They're not Mahayana schools, so they wouldn't accept the perfection of wisdom and so forth as being the words of the Buddha. Yeah. So I have a written question here. I know there are lots of hands. So for the Prasangikas, if there are no human beings anymore, are there still objects that we can call mountain, oceans, and so forth? Do those objects still exist? 아니, 미 메나? 아니, 디 닥시 기강라 닥게 메나? 디 ngobo di yorebes.
당겐 되면은 ngobo디 요마르 직바로 로이 샥바 잠레라 디 샹겐기 로데면은 샤야디 요마로
이네 미 치고 르파 샤기르베스 양나디
로 말해 둔도야 미직보 말해 다 둔도기 앞에는 뒷살에 섬에도 둔도 코랑기 로이 샤바로 쌀에 마삼파도 자디요 말에 둔도길로이 샤야요레 미일로이 샤야 부싱지나 코랑기 칼라데 어디니 사야레 샤라데 코랑길로이 샤바 정말 미직보 말했어.
No. So here, in the answer to this, human beings are not the only ones who posit things by the force of thought. So, for example, an animal, when they see grass, I mean, I don't know how it exactly works in their mind, but they think, oh, this is grass, or however they do that. Then that is what creates the existence, or is not creates, but so that thing doesn't exist until it's designated by mind, but it doesn't need to be a human type of designation. It could be designated in another way. So, but without the positing of objects by a mind, whether it's human or animal or whatever, we would say they don't exist.
뭐야?
Kim, way back there, and then we'll get to Kathy.
In the light-only school, what is it that is imprinting on the foundational consciousness that gives rise to perceived subject and perceived object?
아니, 샘삼백이 루솔라 군시이나 남시이나 박차샤기어레스.
네.
이네 박차샤겐 디수레스.
박차샹겐데 샹겐데다 레 개위레다 미기위레 요로 박차샹겐데 레 디토레 레 개와다 미개와 룽마덴 숨. 다 레숨데레 박차샹겐데 샥사데 군시 아니데 다레 개와다 미개와 챙겐기 아니 강사데다 담만다 요로 강사디 아니 레 개와다 미개와다 룽마덴 숨데 박차샹겐데 체 아니 숨디기 근시등도 바자샤네 아니 대두글라소가 둥아냥에다 대화용에다 아니 약보 통해 닝저 통해다 또 통주 창마다 이도원와다 미용와 통해 창마 바자기 왕기 용기요라 바자대기 이도원와 통화다 미용와 통해 창마 바자대기 왕기 용기요래 인장 상견대 개미
네 이네 디 치로 tundutubarebes
말해 내 치료 튼두투바 말해
레디 코랑기
레 남조 남지 기위레 미기위레 룽마텐지레 숨요로 오 디숨데레
이네 셈레베
다 레라 셈다 셈중 담만다 요로 지당 레스나 셈중레 셈중 셈바스기도 나 디치고도 냠도 쪼기롱데레 나 소체고도 냠비 삼바다 야나 나 차차니 기와 줍고도 냠도 삼바다 야나 게 펜도 치고도 냠비 삼바 야나 나다 개와다 미개와 카야면 나 아니 랑가들라 쪼고도 삼바이나 아니 룽마텐지레 어딘데기 바자 조직이 로라 민저와 숨 디기 샤비 바자라 민저와 숨 아니 디기 바자 디기 나밍이 제부 민저와 숨 어디요래.
So, what creates the imprint on the foundational consciousness or on the consciousness, depending on what they assert, is karma, is the three types of karma: virtuous, non-virtuous, and immovable or sort of neutral karma. And so the karma places an imprint on the consciousness, which then ripens into the various experiences from those karma. And so when we create when we do various actions, these karmas put these imprints down on the consciousness or the foundational consciousness, which then ripen later. So here, when we talk about karma, though, it's really the different types of mind. Karma here is referring to minds and mental factors. So when you have an intention to do something virtuous, that is going to create a virtuous karma. So there's not something external to the mind when we're talking about karma that's like putting the imprints down on the mental consciousness, but rather when we talk about karma, the most important thing is the motivation. That's what is driving that karma. So the mind, which has a virtuous motivation or a non-virtuous motivation or something that's neutral, like, oh, I'm going to walk along this road or whatever, that then that mind then creates an imprint, which then later ripens into the various types of results. So you have these three types of mind, you could say, virtuous, non-virtuous, and immovable, and then they ripen into the various effects that one experiences. So that's what is the sort of agent that puts down the imprints on one's consciousness.
Yeah, that is
Yeah, Kathy, did you have a question quick before we end? Okay. Well, I think Rinpoche will also take questions. We're pretty much at the time, so. Okay. Okay. 아니, 줍다 소속이 디 쳔바당 디자마 샥당 민라와 요르베스. 쳔바.
지당 템바라디 템바기 뭐 코랑라다 쳔바시라면 템바 시디 점바 데비틴 슬로라 샤리아데로 다 템비 뭐데니 아니 똑바래 템바 정말 똑바래 디니 쳔바요 말에 다 이나양 다 템비 듀라 쳔바 이나다 만다와 듀 챈당데 만다와 다 디지요레 다 셈잠바 디조다 디조기 아니 장리케 랭기레 뇽와 시에지 뇽와를 때네 나를 냠수 뇽와를 때네 아니 참바께고레스 냠수 뇽와 시에데 아니 시바랑기 랑단 제직비 랑릭지기 뇽고레스 디 때네 아니 참바중와레스 다 단주에 아니 랑릭이요 마레스 랑릭 메나야 참바께기레스 오다 딘데기 제바요레스
그냥 디 마옹바기 셰바디 문셰라고 디 샥당 민라와 요르베.
문셰라 파제 다 샥당 민라와 믹스요 마레 문셰가 시에지요로 디졸람 다조 문셰가기 주데 조 시내다 삼den기 문시디조레 디조 곰네 아니 문셰가 두기레딜라 삼den기 문시다 디졸라다 제바시라요 마레 곰제 시내다 시에디졸라 제바시라요 마레.
So here, I don't know that we'll get fully into all of the points of your question, but here, so as far as memory, as how that, so all of the various schools except memory, obviously, and memory is something that is conceptual, so recalling a past experience, having had an experience, recalling that up, that's going to be conceptual. But as far as how this process actually works, they would have different ways of positing that. So for some schools, the ones that accept a self-knowing consciousness, this self-cognizing consciousness, Rangrik in Tibetan, they assert that in order to remember something, you have to have had a subjective experience, and for them, the way of having a subjective perceptual experience, they have to posit this self-knowing awareness along with our normal consciousness in order to then have the subjective aspect of memory. Whereas for example, the consequentialist school, they don't accept a self-knowing awareness. They would say that the experiential quality of consciousness is the experiential quality. You don't need to have some other self-cognizing awareness in order to have things like memory. But the way that process happens would probably is posited differently by the various different schools. And then as far as things like seeing the future or something like that. There are clairvoyances, different types of mental powers that one can gain. And for the most part, the presentation of those would probably be relatively similar in terms of their being produced based upon having attained calm abiding and then the various meditative concentrations. And that presentation is relatively the same between the various tenant schools. But as far as memory, it's generally accepted to be conceptual, but then whether or not they accept a self-cognizing consciousness and how that's actually caused and brought about, there would be differences. So we're going to stop there. The time is up. Thank you.
Rana Mendala Gamniya Dayami